Hey YouTube, I'm Ross Magas. This is not real life, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about Tokon Marvel Fighting Souls. And do forgive me if I sound a little bit odd. I'm getting over some kind of cold or something, but that's not important. Like everybody else, I do want to talk about what I think the original starting roster is going to look like. And I did a very nominal amount of research, let's call it. I am a not quite casual, but not quite hardcore fighting game person. I used to like them a lot more than when I was younger. I've kind of lapsed a little bit in playing them really in depth, but I still really love these kinds of games. So this announcement was by far the biggest announcement in that PlayStation showcase, direct, whatever they call it. But again, like I said, I was doing some nominal research to think about the characters they're going to add here, and they did say they're going to try to add some people who we hadn't seen in a fighting game before. And I imagine if they're going to put in characters we had before, they're going to be a little bit different in their iteration, right? But I was actually very surprised to discover something when just looking at the games that Arc System had released in fighting game terms and the amount of characters they had on their rosters when those games released. So without being too in depth, these are the games I saw and the character count at launch. Dragon Ball FighterZ, 21. Guilty Gear Strive, 16. Under Night, 10, and apparently 2 were added later, so we'll count it as 12. And the sequel had 24, but I'm not going to count it. DNF, 16. Blaze Blue, 12. And then this made me think, like, that's not a lot of characters. How many did X-Men vs. Street Fighter launch with? Launched with 17. Marvel 1, 21. And Grand Blue, not Rising versus whatever, the original Grand Blue versus, apparently launched with 11 characters. Now, all of these games would expand eventually with DLC packs and additional characters, but if you average out all these games, the average fighter count between all these games is actually 14.7, and being generous, you can only round up one, it's 15. So obviously this would put it at 16 for the initial roster, which I found quite surprising that there were only 16 characters in average across all these big games. And then I thought about it and I was like, actually, you know what? That's actually not that surprising for a fighting game. And eventually, you know, we get the season pass, you get the ultra arcade special mega editions, and they can call it whatever they like, but that's why there's so many characters later. A lot of these games now have 40, 50 characters, whatever. So before I got into the characters I think are going to make it beyond the first 8 they already revealed, I just wanted to point out there's a possibility that we've already seen half of the characters in this roster. I don't think they should do that. I think this would be very highly to the detriment of this game to only launch with 16 characters. But because that's the average, I'm going to start out there as the base, and then we're going to expand to 20 and then 24, because feasibly I can't see them being more than 24 on a completely brand new fighting game IP. So the reason I didn't count the Marvel games is because the Marvel games, well, one, are a completely different company, and this is not technically Marvel, baby, as they say. But those games already built on the games that had come before them. So even though Marvel 3 had quite a few characters on its vanilla launch, those characters being converted from 2D to 3D already existed for the most part. Yes, some of them were completely new. Not all of them existed, but I think you get my point in that the work didn't have to be done from scratch. And we all remember that Marvel 3, while better than Marvel Infinite, I don't think anyone really complained about how it looked, but I don't think it looked as good as it could have. Let's recap. I have 16 characters. I've thrown in a few who I just think are going to be the characters they pick because it's Marvel and those characters are big. And a couple of these are for me, I understand, but I think those will help fill in the oddball picks. And oddly enough, actually, some of them won't make it till later on the list. So we'll get there eventually. But as we know, we've got the original 8. We got Cap, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, I think her name is. And this is the first time I've seen this character. I've been like, hey, I like this version. We got Storm, we got Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider, Star-Lord, and of course, Doctor Doom. Initially, I wanted to kind of make this like how King of Fighters does it, where every franchise had its team, quote unquote. So like, you know, you can have the Avengers team, the Spider-Man team, the da-da-da team, etc. Go on, you know, until you run out of characters. So in this case, we'd have the Midnight Suns or the X-Men. The X-Men would actually probably have 2 or 3 teams just because my bias is my bias. Continuing on, we have the first of the initial 16, I'm going to say, who I picked just because, I mean, everyone's picked this person. I don't think anyone's not going to pick him. It's going to be Thor, obviously. He's going to round out the big 3 of the Avengers, and he's cool. I don't know what else to say. We've already got lightning effects because Storm's in the game. He's probably going to be a bigger, slower version of Storm with, you know, homing projectiles because he can throw the hammer and bring it back, and setups with that kind of thing. A brawler, bruiser, maybe a command grab in there. It's hard to say. Moving on from Thor, in number 10, I have the Hulk because, of course, it's Marvel. It's the Hulk. But I could also see them doing this where, because to me, they kind of fill the same slot. It's Hulk / She-Hulk for me, actually. And I could see them doing it either way. I know they're not the same and they probably fill out different niches, but in terms of representation of the franchises, we could put in a pretty girl or a hulking guy, and I'm okay with either. So Hulk is going to be, you know, he's going to be Hulk. I don't think he's going to be ripping up the ground or, you know, gamma charging or anything like that, but he's probably going to be a big smasher, brawler, more like I think what Juggernaut was in the old games. X-Men vs. Street Fighter versus how Hulk was in those games, because it makes more sense for Hulk to be that, I think, than to be like really dashy and bouncy around, even though he can move quickly. But again, if they replace him with She-Hulk, I feel like they'll not be too different, because in the comics there are certain strains of She-Hulk where she is basically just a freaking steroid monster looking just like Hulk, and they kind of want to replace him the way the movies have been doing. It's a whole thing, but I could see it going either way. Number 11. This character, I personally wouldn't have put this high on the list, but I think in terms of popularity in the zeitgeist, as you would, I don't see how he will not make it into the game. We're talking about Black Panther at slot number 11. The King of Wakanda is going to be quick, slashes a lot, doing cool things like that. Probably has some cool tech gadgets to differentiate him from, again, the other entry that exists that everyone's going to be comparing this game to. But I would like to see more of a differentiator for Black Panther than even what I think Marvel does. Aside from that, his costume looks really cool. He's just like a lesser Wolverine. He's jumping out there, slashing, doing all this cool stuff, and all his intellect and things like that, I think, are more reserved to things that happen in the background or his interactions with people, not in his fighting style per se. So I think that's where Arxis could really flesh out Black Panther compared to some of the other iterations that have been out there, instead of just being like, yes, I'm the King of Wakanda. But whatever. Moving on. This is another character who I like certain iterations of this character, but I think Marvel likes them more than people like this character. And this is Captain Marvel. And you said, well, we already have Miss Marvel. It's like, well, Captain Marvel's different, and she's been in all the things. And in Midnight Suns, they made a big deal about her being in there. So that's one of my touchstones for this is Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is actually an amazing game. Go play it if you haven't, and you'll be surprised even if you don't like card games. We're going to have Captain Marvel. I would like to see the classic black and gold lightning costume. Probably going to be a DLC costume, maybe just an alternate. You got super strong hot lady. Why not? And I think this could be an interesting place because she's got super strength and laser beams. So it's going to be hard to balance her out. I guess that's a job for the people at ArcSys, but they have to figure out how to deal with having, like, I imagine Hadoukens, but they're like beams, the way like EM Disruptor or Ice Beam was in, I guess there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to the old one, but you know what I'm talking about. And then also having like huge, like you just tap her and she doesn't react and then punches you and you fly away. So that kind of thing. I think Captain Marvel in that sense has a really cool power set, and it'd be cool to have a person, like the character is going to represent like that they're so strong even though they don't look like they're super strong, right? So that's always fun. At number 13, we have another either or, and I have one who I think is going to make it over the other, but again, this is an either or, and I have Invisible Woman or Human Torch. And the reason for these two, not Mr. Fantastic or the Thing, is because the Thing would conflict with the Hulk in terms of big bruiser guy who can take hits, and I just don't think he's that cool. So sorry guys if you like the Thing. And Mr. Fantastic is cool, I guess, but we already have Stretchy Girl, and I don't think ArcSys likes to do lots of do-overs on their characters. So the characters tend to occupy their niches pretty solidly and without having overlap with someone else. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And, Kamala Khan's already in there. She's already stretchy. And the interesting part of Mr. Fantastic is less that he's stretchy and more that he's allegedly smart. So now we have Invisible Woman and Human Torch. And I think Human Torch would be kind of boring because he's just, he's on fire. I mean, he's not boring, but compared to like a moveset and being in a fighting game, I don't think he'll be that interesting. But I think Invisible Woman has the first place here where we can say that I think there's going to be a different set of what the character could do that will occupy its own niche. So let's start with the invisibility. Invisibility itself, I could see being a thing where you turn invisible for a few seconds to throw people off. It's been done in other games. You could set invisible traps, which to prevent them from being completely unfair, they can be hard to see, not completely invisible. And then this allows for a character who is tricky, probably pretty technical, and requires some forethought into how you're going to execute their game plan, which sounds probably a lot more interesting than someone who's just going to jump around, fly, and rush you down shooting fireballs, which I'm pretty sure we'll have another character who does that somewhere along the way. So in that sense, that's why Invisible Woman beats out Johnny, but between the two of them, solid Fantastic Four pick. And at number 14, you may think, why'd you wait so long to put this person on the list? There's no way they're not going to be on here, but it's because there's another either or pick. And at number 13, I have Wolverine /X23. And again, I know they're different. I know they'll probably play different if they're both in there, and they probably will eventually both be in this game. But to start things out, X-Men has claws, regenerates, get angry. I can see them being considered the same. So, and this is the character I was saying actually, like we said earlier, I think his playstyle conflicts with Black Panther. Aside from that, Black Panther is just different looking. So Wolverine's going to be there, iconic, or Lara, whichever they decide. And heaven forbid to beat Daken, right? But there's going to be one of these X people in this game. And I don't think they're going to do the same Berserker barrages. Maybe they could have, I guess I'm thinking about if there's both of them in there. But so eventually it's going to be somebody who is going to jump around. They're going to do a lot of poking, a lot of stabbing, a lot of this, a lot of that. Maybe they have an install where they can heal a little bit, or, give up gauge to get regenerative healer, or even just red health, Mr. Red Gauge. Regenerates faster. Who knows? There's a lot that I think could be done with Wolverine or X23. But pretty self-explanatory. Huge characters. I find it hard for at least one of them to not make it into the initial 16. Number 15. This one could have been Deadpool, but it's not. I think they have a lot of overlap, except Deadpool has like the fourth wall breaking thing. But this character is just cooler, and I think he's owed this. He's been gone for a while. I'm not the only person who's going to say this. But come on, guys, just bring in Blade. He's cool. They just brought him into Marvel Rivals. Everyone knows he's cool. He's a guy with guns and swords. Like, what else do you need? What else do I need to say? Like, he can play into the vampire bit by getting a buff when he has to, because, he always does that at the end to get through, even though he hates it. So it can be a cool place to have a more tactics character, because then I think that would play more into the way Blade is as a character. So some cross between how Deadpool would, you just imagine how Deadpool behaves, no fourth wall stuff, and then maybe a combination of like how Wesker is in Marvel. I think this would make an awesome Blade. Actually, it's time. Come on, guys, put Blade in the game so he can stop ice skating his way to the top. All right, let him just have a moment. All right, and the last of the initial 16 is going to be Scarlet Witch, because she's important in the comics, she's important in the movies, she's important in the TV show, she's important in everything, okay? And she's cool, actually, especially depending on the iteration you have. She's always going to have that no more ultimate, I assume, because that's her most defining thing. I think what Arxis could do to differentiate her from, say, Marvel Rivals or Marvel Midnight Suns is, well, I guess not Marvel Midnight Suns, but to delve more into the character's connection to Chthon and like the Dark Elder God type thing. That seems really anime to me. So I think that could be a cool character who does confusing things, lots of teleporting, maybe even like what would you call it? A move that does like confusion where your controls get altered in a way and something like that, but it only lasts for like 2 or 3 seconds, because if it's any more, then you're just going to get destroyed. So I think that's going to be a pretty cool possibly final on the initial 16, but Wanda's going to make it. She's not quite an X-Men character only, but she's not quite an Avengers character either, so she can fill this weird other section. Okay, now moving on to the next 4 to fill out as if we had gotten 20 initial characters. And I think some people are going to be upset that this person didn't make it higher into the list, but they've been in everything. Everyone loves this guy, and I feel like he always gets DLC treatment. Except, I don't know, but we're of course talking about Venom this time. And I think Venom, actually, now that I'm talking about it, Venom might make it in a little bit sooner, because I feel like Venom kind of already exists if we take Guilty Gear archetype characters and use them like Eddie. Did I say Eddie? No, Zato. I said Eddie. And, he dives into the ground and does all this kind of stuff. But if they want to differentiate him completely from the old ones, I don't know how much they can, because every game treats Venom this way. But I definitely don't want him to just be a buff Spider-Man, who has a little bit more armor or something like that. So there's definitely going to have to be something with the symbiote involved, and tendrils and transforming, acting out, and doing crazy stuff. Venom's cool, and I think he could be pushed back to be the big marquee character for DLC chapter number 1 to make you buy it. Number 18. This one is a very personal pick of mine, and I don't necessarily see him making his way into it, but I think he'd be an excellent addition, because I don't think we have too many bad guys on this list so far. And we're going to have the Kingpin, Wade Wilson himself. Did I say Wade Wilson? Wilson Fisk. Why did I say Wade Wilson? You might ask, how come you're putting Wilson Fisk instead of the Thing? You said big guys are going to clash with each other. Well, I actually see Kingpin as more of a grappler, brawler a la Zangief than I do as a menacing big guy a la Potemkin. I always thought it's really interesting that I feel like in the comics they always show him as he's actually really strong. In the video game, he's ridiculously strong, even though he shouldn't be that strong compared to Spider-Man or whoever. But you know, they can do whatever they want, and his title authorizes his ability to be that strong. That's how power systems work, right? He could be big. Imagine a big grappler, a couple odd moves in there where he can summon things or something because you know he's rich. He owns everything. Or they could tie it into his relationship with the Hellfire Club and how things are a little bit later. But, you know, it depends on which iteration of the Kingpin they want. But just imagine just grabbing people, crushing them, slamming them, you know, stuff like that. I think it'll be an excellent addition to the game. To piggyback off of Kingpin and things in New York, we're going to number 19 and Daredevil. So, Daredevil, I'm kind of iffy on personally, but I think he is a good pick because you want to have somebody who is quick, probably has some elements like Spider-Man's Spider Sense move where he can kind of get out of the way, react to things. He's going to be, I foresee this version of Daredevil at least being some kind of mix between Spider-Man and Ghost Rider where he's like whipping out the sticks, you know, but they're like on that tether. And then you can like pull him back. He can do all sorts of martial arts things. We can tie into his time as Ronin because I think he was that for covering for Hawkeye for a little bit, you know. But the whole like vigilant, like he can't see but he can see, you know, spider sense that he has. That's not a spider sense. I feel like it works itself out. So quick guy, lots of getting in, getting out, but probably maybe can't take a hit too much because he's a normal quote unquote guy compared to the rest of these people. But I think Daredevil is an excellent addition to this cast. Okay, and number 20, the last of year 1 DLC, we'll say, is Sandman. We don't have that much Spider-Man representation. Yeah, Venom made it and that kind of thing. There were a lot of other Spider-Man villains I thought about, like Doc Ock, Electro, Black Cat, other Mysterio, Vulture. They're cool, but I think those guys can make it later because Sandman, I think, is a really good off-ball pick because you can then have him turn into all sorts of stuff. And the same way with Venom, we have pre-existing things that I think could tie into this really well. This, I think he'd be an excellent character, turning into this, turning into that, disappearing into the ground, you know, becoming intangible, making traps. He is there's a lot to do with, especially if they make their own version of this character. Like Sandman's just kind of always been like this dumb goon, you know, in like the movies, in the shows, in the comics or whatever. And it always cracks me up because like of all the people I think Spider-Man can fight, like probably none are as dangerous as this person. But Spider-Man's lucky that he's dumb. He doesn't know how to use his powers that well. He doesn't think outside the box, I guess. Maybe he does. Tell me about it if you saw those runs in the comics and how terrifying that would actually be. But Sandman turning into dust, coming in behind you, counters. His hand can turn into all manner of weapons. They have the same stretchy mechanics that the Stretch Girl's gonna have. So, I mean, he's halfway done, right? Come on, Arcs, put him in there. All right, now we're on to the last 4. This may be year 2 DLC, or it could be the last set of the characters who were initially added. But we're going to start out number 21 with Mystique. And I think Mystique would be an interesting character in the obvious sense, in that I don't know if there are a lot of really strong I turn into other characters. The only ones I can think of are Shang Tsung and Mokujin. Yeah, those are the only ones I can think of. And I think that would be really cool, especially with the tag system it looks like they have. I'm not super figured out, but like clearly you can tag people in to do stuff. And it'd be interesting if you could tag her in, and depending on what additional things you press after that, she is tagging in as one of the 4 people on the opposing team. That'd be pretty crazy. So they need to be aware of their own tag-ins coming against them. And Mystique is just cool. I don't know what to say. If when I was originally making this list, I had to really pull back because 90% of the list was like X-Men, because X-Men is my personal favorite Marvel thing, but I had to like pare them a lot back. But Mystique made it, and we'll have the copycat character in there. Number 22. Like I said, I had to pare back a lot of the characters from the X-Men series, but I couldn't. This guy is one of my favorites. I'm sure he's one of your favorites. We're talking about Magneto. And I don't think Magneto is going to play the same way he did in Marvel. Of course not. I mean, they definitely want to differentiate him. So he may be possibly, let's say, a slow moving guy, but then like all his like abilities compensate for that. Maybe having more barriers or like repulsing kind of things. But I mean, come on, Magneto's cool. Just, I can't think of do I need more reasons than that to put Magneto in this list? Magneto. All right. Number 23. This one was more of a like oddball thing, and it actually only came up to me because I was thinking about Spider-Verse and looking at the characters in Marvel Rivals. But Penny Parker, I think, would be an excellent addition to the cast if we could make it out to like this many people, because she's going to offer something that I think none of the other characters have offered so far, which is a puppet control character and possibly a change to I guess you can call it an install, where she actually just gets in the mech and then you control the mech for a little bit. But yeah, like so far we don't have one of those characters. I think that'd be an interesting thing. They may end up being low tier, but it'll be fun to have an interesting different mechanic because of that. And Penny kind of fits perfectly, and she's more famous than ever because of the game and the movie. So why not? And last, at number 24, the definite last of season 2 or the end of the 24th character of the initial roster. This is going to be our boy, yours and mine, Cyclops. You think Wolverine's going to make it and then he didn't make it in? Come on, guys. And so the thing I think is going to help them differentiate Cyclops from previous games is which iteration of Cyclops are we going to get? And specifically for me, I want the I guess more modern iteration, the Krakoa Cyclops, the hard edge Cyclops, the one who's been hurt and damaged, and now he has, he was the bad guy for a while. That Cyclops, bring me that Cyclops, the one who's gonna fight dirty, the one who's gonna be a little bit harder and harsher than the Boy Scout. Also, the X visor is very cool. I don't know how else to say it. It just looks cool. And what else do you want, right? Obviously, the Boy Scout outfit, the blue and gold, is going to be an alternate costume. Hell, you could even have the Age of Apocalypse costume as an alternate costume. But I think we should start with the older, more hardened Cyclops as a alternative to the younger, I still want to believe Professor X's dream is real and we can live together in peace Cyclops, okay? So battle hardened Cyclops versus ideal young Cyclops. Let's pick the old guy here for a sec, and just not because I'm also old, but like to make it different from the X-Men Marvel Capcom series, obviously. And that's gonna round it out for me. Cyclops is obviously gonna use laser beams. I would love to see how they can turn into a more tactician-y kind of dirty fighter than like a straightforward like Ryu, I guess, for lack of a better term. And those are my 24 picks. So again, just to reiterate my point, I think there is a non-zero chance that this game comes out with only 16 characters, guys. Okay, so I just wanted to say that up front. If not, hopefully we can get 20, at least 24, and then DLC will come drive the character count up to, I don't know, 60, whatever crazy number they want to do if the game is successful. But these are the characters I think, some of them already hit the chopping block on the first 2 extra segments, but I think this is a good list of people, and we still have a lot of people to pick from. Certain favorites, like I didn't get a chance to choose Sinister didn't make it onto the list. Apocalypse didn't make it onto the list. Did I say I like X-Men? You know, again, like Spider-Man's villains. I said Mephisto. Mysterio, Dr. Octopus. A lot of people just not making the list because we got to cut it down to a reasonable amount. But let me know who you think is going to be in the initial 16, or I will allow for up to 24. And who did I miss? Who do you think absolutely would knock out some of these people I've mentioned and be there instead? And your reasoning for it, or if they're just cool, that's a good reason too. Hell, we didn't even get to the Inhumans. I mean, nobody really liked them, I think, but Black Bolt's pretty cool. So is Medusa. There's only two I think feasibly have a chance to make it. But either way, I'm Ross Magas. This is Not Real Life. Thanks for listening to me ramble on for who I think can make it into Marvel Tokon's Fighting Souls. I'll see you guys next time.